Somewhere in a hedgerow outside Caen, a German officer raises his head. He has done this 100 times before. A quick look, assess the ground, give an order. This time is different. A single shot crosses 400 yards of Norman farmland in a fraction of a second. The officer doesn't hear it. He never moves again. His men don't know where it came from. They don't move for 3 hours. That is what a Canadian sniper does. Not just kill a man, paralyze an army.
But here is a better question than how good were Canadian snipers in WW2. It is this: why Canada? Why did a country of 11 million people with no professional military tradition before 1914 produce one of the most feared sniper corps in the history of modern warfare? And why did the Wehrmacht, in prisoner interviews and after-action reports, specifically identify Canadian snipers as a disproportionate threat? The answer begins not in a training facility, but in a forest in Ontario, and it stretches across 30 years of warfare.
To understand why Canada produces extraordinary snipers, you first have to understand what Canada is. In 1914, it is a country where a significant proportion of men grow up hunting in wilderness that has no margin for error. The boreal forests of Ontario, the prairies of Manitoba, the mountains of British Columbia. These are places where you learn to read ground, move without sound, and shoot accurately, because missing means going hungry.
Francis Pegahmagabow is born in 1889 on the Perry Island Indian Reserve in Ontario. He grows up Ojibwa, raised by an elder in the traditions of the Anishinaabe, which means, among other things, learning to hunt in the forests of Georgian Bay with the silence and patience that define his people's relationship with the land. He enlists on August 13, 1914, 10 days after the declaration of war, among the earliest volunteers in the Canadian Expeditionary Force. What he does over the next 4 years rewrites what anyone believes a single soldier can accomplish.
Pegahmagabow racks up 378 confirmed kills, the highest total of any sniper on either side of the First World War. He also captures 300 enemy soldiers, going behind German lines, moving through no man's land in darkness, learning enemy patterns, and returning with intelligence that saves his battalion time and again. He fights at the Second Battle of Ypres, Passchendaele, and the 100 Days Offensive, earning the Military Medal and 2 bars, one of only 39 soldiers in the entire Canadian Expeditionary Force to receive that distinction 3 times. His fellow soldiers call him Peggy. The Germans have no name for him. They simply learn, one position at a time, that the Canadian sector is where officers die.
That reputation crosses the Atlantic again in 1939, and this time, the Canadian Army decides to systematize it. By 1944, every Canadian infantry battalion contains a dedicated platoon of scouts and snipers, specially equipped, specially trained, the forerunners of modern reconnaissance units. These are not riflemen handed a scope and pointed at the enemy. Canadian sniper training is rigorous and comprehensive. Marksmanship is almost secondary to fieldcraft, camouflage, reconnaissance, and the ability to remain completely motionless for hours in any terrain and any weather. Snipers are taught to disassemble and reassemble their rifles blindfolded. They study the ballistics of the .303 British round at distances beyond 600 yards, accounting for wind, elevation, and on the longest shots, the rotation of the earth.
Their weapon is the Lee-Enfield No.4 Mk I, a standard bolt-action service rifle fitted with a No. 32 scope and a wooden cheek rest. It is not a precision instrument in the modern sense. It has no rangefinder, no laser, no computer assistance. What it has is a fast bolt throw that allows a trained man to fire and re-engage in under 2 seconds, and a trigger pull so smooth that generations of competitive shooters have considered it among the finest production rifles ever made.
Canadian and British snipers also revived the ghillie suit, the full-body camouflage garment pioneered by Scottish Highland game wardens and Lovat scouts, adapted now for bocage hedgerows and Italian rubble. Each suit is built by the sniper himself, woven with local vegetation specific to the terrain he will operate in. A well-made ghillie suit at 30 yards is invisible. At 300 yards, it is impossible. The effect on German units is not merely tactical, it is psychological in a way that artillery cannot replicate. German soldiers facing Canadian snipers often hesitate to move or expose themselves, even under direct orders. The mathematics of a sniper's presence are simple and terrifying. A man has no way to calculate where the shot will come from, or when, or who it will choose. Officers are priority targets. Their binoculars, their maps, their slightly better kit, their habit of pointing at things while giving orders. Then NCOs, then machine gun crews, then radio operators. The sniper doesn't need to kill an entire unit. He needs to kill the right 6 men, and the unit stops functioning as a coordinated force.
In Italy, December 1943, this pressure reaches its most concentrated form. The Battle of Ortona, 8 days of house-to-house fighting between the Canadian 1st Infantry Division and Germany's elite 1st Parachute Division, becomes known as the Italian Stalingrad. The streets of the Adriatic port town are too narrow for tanks, the rubble too dense for conventional tactics. German Fallschirmjäger, battle-hardened by years of war and ordered by Hitler to hold the town at any cost, fill every building with machine guns, snipers, and booby traps. The Canadians respond by blasting holes through shared walls, a technique they call mouse-holing, moving building to building without ever stepping onto the street.
Canadian snipers operate in the rubble of Ortona with devastating effect, targeting German officers and machine gun crews through gaps in crumbled walls, from collapsed upper floors, from positions they hold for hours without moving. After 8 days, the depleted German forces withdraw. The Canadians have suffered 1,375 dead in the broader Moro River campaign, almost a quarter of all Canadian casualties in the entire Italian campaign. But Ortona falls, and the German 1st Parachute Division, among the finest infantry formations the Wehrmacht possesses, withdraws from it. By June 1944, on the Norman coast, the pattern repeats. Canadian snipers arriving for D-Day receive last-minute training in England in May 1944, then deploy into the bocage with a reputation that precedes them. In the dense hedgerows, Canadian snipers disrupt German defenses, picking off officers and machine gun crews, sowing chaos in positions that artillery cannot reach without destroying the Allied infantry too close behind them. Sergeant Harold Marshall, operating in Normandy with his No. 4 Mk I, eliminates an entire German machine gun crew from over 600 yards, a single engagement that allows his unit to advance without a single casualty. It is not recorded in any famous history. It is one of hundreds of such engagements that reshape the tactical landscape of every Canadian sector, quietly, one shot at a time. The broader lesson of the Canadian sniper legacy is not about marksmanship. Any army can teach a man to shoot. What Canada sends to war is something harder to manufacture. Men who grew up reading ground, who understand patience, not as a virtue, but as a survival skill, who carry into battle a relationship with the natural world that urban industrial society had largely forgotten. The Wehrmacht could counter many things. It could counter armor with armor, artillery with artillery, logistics with improvisation. What it could not counter was a man it could not see, who had been still for 6 hours, who knew exactly where to wait and how long to wait there. Canadian soldiers' sniping prowess goes all the way back to the First World War. It runs from Pegahmagabow in the mud of Passchendaele to the rubble of Ortona,
to the hedgerows of Normandy, a thread of lethal patience that the Wehrmacht feared, studied, and never fully solved. In warfare, the most dangerous man is often not the one you can see. He's the one who chose 3 hours ago exactly where to be when you finally moved.